This episode of Couch Potatoes Unite! Is sponsored by Blue Bridge Games. For the games and gifts you won't find anywhere else, head to Grand Rapids, Michigan's friendliest local game store, Blue Bridge Games. Blue Bridge Games carries an extensive line of board games, card games, role-playing tabletop games, Magic the Gathering, and more. Stop into their storefront on East Fulton or shop with them online at bluebridgegames.com.
You say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around our water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch Potatoes Unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch Potatoes Unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch Potatoes Unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because this is no lie, big or little. We are united couch potatoes in all the ways, and that's the truth. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening, and we're checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like for Couch Potatoes Unite. We're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the website or the podcast via iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Amazon Music, basically wherever you get your podcasts, to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including but not limited to Stranger Things, iZombie, The Good Place, Game of Thrones, American Horror Story, Grace and Frankie, Mr. Robot, Charmed, Riverdale, Altered Carbon, The Orville, Outlander, Westworld, Fuller House, Schitt's Creek, and Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for The 100, Supernatural, This Is Us, the DCTU series will talk Season 4 of Black Lightning. We'll be launching new panels covering Call the Midwife, The Animaniacs, Killing Eve, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, American Gods, Grey's Anatomy, Cobra Kai, Peaky Blinders, and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. We'll cry bazinga for Big Bang Theory. We'll dive deep into the fantasy world of The Magicians. We'll navigate the witty political satire of Parks and Recreation. We'll become psychos for Psych. We'll go where everybody knows your name with Cheers. And we hope you'll be listening when we talk about Frasier. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, and game stores. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the website, our YouTube channel, our Apple iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. In the meantime, if you don't hear a show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of the outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, verbal, non-physically violent, and truthful feedback. Communication works wonders, you know, which these characters apparently struggle with, but we'll be talking about that shortly. Today, we're around the water cooler and taking a first look at the first season of a sudsy dark comedy drama based on a novel of the same name that airs on HBO. The show is Big Little Lies, and this is the first of a two-part miniseries in which CPU catches up on this drama. In this episode, part 1 of this miniseries, we are discussing Season 1, which aired on HBO from February 19th to April 2nd, 2017, with a total of 7 episodes. We'll discuss Season 2 in Part 2 of this miniseries. Created and written by David E. Kelly and originally billed as a miniseries, Big Little Lies stars Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman, Shailene Woodley, Laura Dern, and Zoe Kravitz as 5 women in Monterey, California who become embroiled in a murder investigation. Alexander Skarsgård, Adam Scott, James Tupper, and Jeffrey Nordling also feature in supporting roles. The series has received critical acclaim, particularly for its writing, directing, acting, cinematography, and soundtrack. Its first season received 16 Primetime Emmy Award nominations and won 8, including Outstanding Limited Series, a Directing Award, and Acting Awards for Kidman, Skarsgård, and Dern. The trio also won Golden Globe Awards, and the show won Best Miniseries or Television Film. Kidman and Skarsgård also received Screen Actors Guild Awards for their performances. Big Little Lies was popularly requested for discussion and beloved by some of our resident couch potatoes, many of whom appear on this panel. In fact, around the water cooler today are 5 of our frequent panelists, as well as your very involved moderator, all of whom are ready to tell no lies, big or little, about Big Little Lies. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have watched all episodes of this series through season 1 and may discuss sensitive plot points. So for those of you who have not watched Big Little Lies and plan to do so at some point, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. At this time, I am going to introduce our panel. They all know how this works, but I'm going to remind them and remind you, listener, because it's what we do every time. I'm going to ask them to identify themselves by their first name, just their first name, not their life story, just their first name, and how you came to watch Big Little Lies. What made you start watching? How'd you find out about it? What kept you watching? And then you get to rate your interest in the show. And this interest would be in reaction to the first season specifically. And it would be along our standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do, created especially for Big Little Lies. Panel, are you ready for this?
Yay!
Let's do it.
All right. So how would you rate your interest in season 1 of Big Little Lies according to its character question? Would you say you love this show? You love all of the suburban housewife antics and shenanigans, if for no other reason than it distracts you from your own complicated and somewhat unhappy life, like Madeline Martha Mackenzie? Do you care about this show deeply, particularly the strong female characters at the forefront of the cast? You identify with the quiet desperation of keeping up a bold face to hide much darker secrets and lies from others and even from yourself, like Celeste Wright. Do you enjoy this show well enough, but think it needs to take bolder risks to further amplify the story it's telling right now? It almost seems too subtle, and seeds being planted take a long time to blossom, like Jane Chapman. Do you think this series offers some great potential for mystery and for interesting relationship dynamics? You're willing to go with the flow with all of it, at least until you find yourself forced to fight for what you love, or against what you hate about it, like Bonnie Howard Carlson? Are you unhealthily obsessed with this show and its characters, particularly with Celeste, and might find yourself taking out your aggression in entirely bad ways to express your passion for it, like Perry Wright? Do you have no real interest in the show? You find that the main character or characters seem devoid of love and interest in their fellow humans, and or you are oblivious to some of the larger subtexts of this complex drama, like Ed Mackenzie. Do you care very little for this show? You think that the main character is a real piece of work, and you'd rather move on with your new life and your new wife, or spouse, like Nathan Carlson. Do you sort of hate this show? Oh sure, it offers a great portrayal of the complexity of women's lives, particularly in examining how women treat, support, or denigrate each other, but you are more interested in your own sense of self-worth and in speaking to the manager, where appropriate, to ensure that you and yours are properly protected, served, or portrayed, like Renata Klein. Or you only watch this show because your spouse watches it, and she, he, or they are clearly ruining the household. Are clearly running the household, like Gordon Klein.
Wow.
Who would like to start?
Hi, my name's Callie.
Hi, Callie.
Hi, I am Kylie and Hillary's sister-in-law. I am married to their brother, who does not watch the show.
Dynamics.
Haha, I didn't have to do it.
But you get to know next.
The fact that Austin doesn't watch the show is a surprise to no one, because he was completely uninterested. And I was like, okay, I'll watch it on my own. So I remember my mother was like, you, Nicole Kidman, Reese Witherspoon, watch this show. And I was like, I can't. I don't have HBO. Oh, wait. Yes, I do have HBO because we got it for Game of Thrones. So then I was like, awesome. So I just waited for the times when Austin wasn't around and watched it. That's how I started watching, and I was hooked right away. I was into it right away. I loved it right away. So for your question, your character questions, I am notorious for picking more than one.
You're not alone, girl.
I have to, and I will pick. I love that. Hillary. Now, also, this is Hillary and I's first podcast together. This is going to be super fun. I am a mix between Madeline and Celeste without the weird unhappy marriage household things that are in there.
Look, that's part of her character.
But your character descriptions of how I love
You
this.
can just be like, your husband's unhappy because he doesn't want to watch it or something.
Doesn't want to watch it. He's busy being a hockey referee sometimes in his free time, which is weird sometimes. But whatever, it's fine. It's fine. He likes hockey, so that's.
It's fine. He likes hockey.
That's what it is. So yes, of course, I'm a mix. I love the show. I think it's awesome. I thought right away I was hooked, and they're only 7-episode series each season. So what's not to love about that, right?
Right. Callie, what are some of the other CPU panels you've been on?
I was on Buffy, which I think might be my favorite show of all time ever. I think it might be. What else was I on, Kylie? I don't remember now. Oh, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend we just did. Mm-hmm. That was fun. And I don't know. I'm so I don't know. I do them every once in a while when I'm like, I love that show. And then, and then I go away.
There's
a year.
An important one that you're on with another one of the panelists here, and it's got scariest seasons.
Oh, American Horror Story. I love American Horror Story so much. I love it so much. Even when I don't love it, even when I don't love what has happened with 1984 wasn't my favorite, I still loved it because I'm weird like that.
White Claw.
Yeah, it's the White Claw. Everything.
All right, we're off to a roaring start. Welcome back, Callie.
Thank you.
I was going to say, maybe I should piggyback off of her, but you can go, Eddie, if you want.
No.
Sure?
Yeah, let the other one, piggyback, because she did your disclaimer for you. But then, Eddie, you can go after her.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm Hillary.
Hi, Hillary.
Hi. Everything that Callie just said was accurate. And usually I'm totally having to do the disclaimer because my husband is sitting next to me talking. I do a lot of I do some random drama sitcoms, but I've been primarily on a lot of the nerdy fandom podcasts. If you know me, that's not a shocker. But we just did Was Breaking Bad the last one we did? I think so.
Better Call Saul.
Oh yeah, Better Call Saul, which still part of the universe. All wonderful. Listen to it later. Anyways, I heard about, you know what, it's kind of the same thing as Callie. I kind of fell into, I had heard some buzz about it. I already had HBO because of Game of Thrones. And it came out during this, I just was looking for something different to watch. It had an amazing cast. I have a big fat crush on Alexander Skarsgård. I was like, I'm gonna watch this show, and also pretty much got sucked into it immediately, largely just because one of the things that draws me in more than anything else is character development, and there's a buttload of it in this show. And I think I ended up watching it all in one day, actually, because I just happened to have the day off, and then I think there was other things I wanted to do, and then that just didn't happen, so I wanted to watch the rest of it. So with that being said, I'm also going to say that I'm falling into what Callie said. I notoriously also pick multiple characters. I'm totally a mix between Madeline and Celeste. I enjoy everything that's happening, especially the first season. And I really like the dynamics of these female characters and how they play against each other and kind of come together in different ways. Also the male roles, but the females kind of really drive it. So I enjoyed it.
All right. Welcome back, Hillary, my sister.
She does it every time, by the way.
Hey, patterns and predictability. It's all part of the podcast.
In case they just forgot after we told them twice.
Maybe the reminders for the people drinking wine. Dynamics.
There are sisters. There are sisters on this podcast, if you didn't know that already.
Sisters. Anyway, who wanted to go next already?
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Eddie.
Hi, Eddie.
Woo! So, oh my goodness. I would have to say I am a mix as well. Oh, I forgot to say how I started watching the show. Grab your Kleenex. The show actually premiered, I will remember the date. The show premiered February 19th, 2017, which was an anniversary death of my mother. And my mother was Nicole Kidman fan. So I was like, okay, it's the day my mom passed, new show with Nicole Kidman coming out, I'm going to watch it. I actually didn't know anything about the show, and I was watching the show, and it started, and I went, ooh, Reese Witherspoon, okay, all right.
Okay.
Ooh, Nicole Kidman, all right, keep going, okay. And then, I mean, it's a star-studded cast, and I mean, we already talked about Alexander Skarsgård. I mean, let's throw that out there. And so I was hooked. I honestly didn't have HBO. My neighbor at the time had HBO, and that's how I watched the show. I actually learned about the show online. I can't remember if it was on Facebook or like an advertisement or something, and that's why I watched it, and I was like, I'm just going to watch one episode. But I fell in love with the show. So with that being said, I am also, shocker, I, however, am Bonnie and Jane. Because the show is really good. I think the show is so good. However, it was kind of predictable for me. It turned into one of those predictable shows. And like, we'll talk later. I like to call it's a cleaning show. I was hooked, so I had to keep watching. But I wasn't always invested, and I wanted to watch it 100%. So, yeah. Now I have to say what podcast I've done. Oh, Lord, help us all. Okay. I've done American Horror Story. I've done Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I'm on This Is Us. I was originally on Once Upon a Time. I did How to Get Away with Murder. Then we jumped shark. Then I came back and finished the series. Did that. I did this show that nobody probably ever will remember, Telenovela, which literally had half a season. And I actually wrote on that. I didn't actually podcast on that. But we're finally about to podcast on my favorite TV show of all time. Shocker. Me being gay and saying The Golden Girls is my favorite show. I should not be shocked at all. And I'm so excited. And that podcast is going to be intense. It's going to be crazy. So yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yay.
Well,
Did you want us to list every one we've been on?
I can't even.
I couldn't even.
you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
Just say so.
Greatest hit.
Yeah, just say, I just
Greatest hit.
invite people to list what they remember the most. But anyway, welcome back, Eddie, member of many panels.
So I'm Julianne.
Hi, Julianne.
So I came to watch Big Little Lies after it had been out for a little while. I remember seeing the advertisements and thinking that cast is absolutely stacked. And I am always here for a great acting moment. I'm also a huge HBO fan. And like, I feel like that's a weird thing to say, being a fan of like a particular channel, but I just really feel like everything HBO puts out is quality. You might not always like it or be in for the story, but I feel like everything they put out is quality. So I was like, I'm just going to give this a shot. And I was instantly hooked. I mean, on top of like the great acting, which almost goes without saying, but it should go with saying because it's just so fantastic. It's a beautiful show to look at. The location is super incredible. Like everywhere that these women live is just so enviable. I'm a really big fan of music in a show and how it's used, and I think music is super important in the show. It drives a lot of the storytelling, so that's kind of what got me hooked and kept me watching it. So as far as the characters, I have to agree with Hillary and Kylie. I think I'm like Madeline and Celeste. I think that's the first time I've chosen two characters, too. Yeah, I mean, Madeline's description is, if for no other reason than it distracts you from your own complicated and somewhat unhappy life, like, that is relatable to me. I agree with that. But also, like, the female characters are really kind of what makes me love the show the most, and, like, I think that these are characters that could be really easy to make one-dimensional, and you could sort of write them off as, like, Beverly Hills housewife kind of women, and you see so much more than just that. So I'm in between those two. And then as far as the podcast panels I've been on Altered Carbon, Mr. Robots, the Breaking Bad universe, so Better Call Saul with that. So I don't really enjoy like light television, I don't think.
This might be
I think I like the dramas.
Yeah, this might be the lightest one that you've talked about so far.
I think so. I really do.
All right. Welcome back, Julia.
Well, no wonder you got your wine.
Right. Exactly.
Hello, I'm Anna Laura.
Hi, Anna Laura.
I first watched the show when I was off from college on winter break in 2017. So this was like about 6 months after, well, more than 6 months several months after the first season had aired. And at this point, it was still just a miniseries. And I had HBO to watch Game of Thrones. And I was like, you know what? I've got the free trial to use up. I might as well check it out. And I binged it in like a couple of days. And I loved it. It was so good. And I totally agree with Juliana. Like, the characters are so good. The acting is so good. They are definitely like at surface level characters that could be very one-dimensional, that you could underestimate. And I think that's partially the point, is that there's hidden depth, and definitely hidden depths to this show. So yeah, I became obsessed. And then in 2019, when they were like, surprise, we're doing a second season, me and all my friends got together and we watched the first season and then watched the second season together. And we've all been obsessed ever since. And when Kylie was like, listen, guys, it's go time. We're doing the podcast. I was like, oh my God, I got to finally read the book. So I read the book too. So yeah, here for it. Love it. I think I'm going to have to go with the rest of the ladies. I think I would be a mixture of Madeline and Celeste. I love this show. I mean, who among us in the year of our Lord 2021 is not watching TV to escape our lives? That is a 2020/2021 mood if I've ever heard it. So
Yes.
Full agree on those. I'm also incapable of picking only one character for these. And then as far as other podcasts that I've been on so far, just Outlander.
It's all true. Welcome back, Anna Laura.
I have a quick question for Anna Laura. Is she the only one that's read the book of Us? Yes? Is that correct?
I have not read the book.
I did not read the book.
Is the book just the first season?
Yes.
Okay. That was my
Yes.
question.
Okay.
And there
The
are
whole-
some subtle but interesting differences that we can get into as the conversation goes along further. But yeah, it was really interesting having watched the TV series first and then reading the book and imagining all of the characters. Like, and I think that's also a testament to like how good the casting is, because I still absolutely imagined every single actress or actor
Who they are.
as the characters. Yeah, who they are.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, it's
Good.
really good. I do highly recommend the book as well.
But before we get too far down that road, I still have to introduce myself beyond the introduction. And my name is Kylie, as I've said.
Hi, Kylie.
Hi.
Hi, Kylie.
Hi.
Hey,
Hey.
Girl.
bye, sister.
Sup?
Thank God we're not drinking every time you say sister. I'd be drunk.
Yeah.
And I am moderating, I guess, and participating today, as is often the case. And I started watching Big Little Lies because there were quite a few people, most of whom you've just heard speak, who said, I want to talk about Big Little Lies on the podcast. And I was like, what? And they said, yeah. And so, I mean, I'm sure I've seen the preview because I also was an avid Game of Thrones watcher, and there are also other HBO shows that I enjoy. And I'm sure I saw previews, and I'm sure I thought, man, what an awesome cast. But I'm also a producer of a TV podcast and much love TV. So it wasn't like on my radar until potential panelists said, let's put it on the radar. And now we're here. I kept watching because, as others have said, it's pretty darn good. I kept thinking about it as sort of like Desperate Housewives, but much better. Which, Eddie, sorry, I know we're going to have fights about it. But that's what
I forgot I was on that podcast. I moderated that podcast.
You did, but I had the feelings back then. I still hold those feelings, and I think Big Little Lies is a better show. But we'll talk about that. In terms of my character along the character question, I think I'm squarely in one. Well, I might be. There might be more than one. Guess I think one sometimes. Who do you think I am, Kristen? Like, what was that for? Anyway, I think I'm primarily Celeste, because I do care about this show deeply. I do love the strong female characters. Identify with the quiet desperation and blah, blah, blah. I don't have any dark secrets, but I really love her character probably the most. I would maybe add a dash of Jane. I think it takes a minute to perk up, but it does definitely get there. There is an ample revving up to the season, that it starts off slow and kind of plants seeds and then grows real fast as the 7 episodes progress. But primarily, I'm Celeste. I'm very excited to talk about this show. Turns out it's a good recommendation and we're going to have things to say. But because we're taking a first look, we now get to do what Hillary calls the star business, or the star rating scale. This is a standard scale that doesn't change with each show we do, and we only do it when we're taking a first look. So the very first episode about a show that we talk about, we do this scale. So, how would you rate the show overall? And by overall, I can qualify that to say you can pick whatever point makes sense to you. Have you seen both seasons? Rate it that way. Are you thinking of it from the first episode? Rate it that way. Whatever you're comfortable with. But how would you rate Big Little Lies along this scale? Would you say it's 5 stars? Holy smokes, you have to watch every single episode of Big Little Lies that has ever been produced or may yet be produced. It is the best show in the history of whatever genre this show is in. 5 stars. Is it 4 stars? It certainly seems intriguing and you're invested in keeping or continuing to watch, but you see possible pitfalls in the premise. Is it 3 stars? You'll give it one more try. Maybe you only watched part of it. There were things you liked, things you didn't like. You're going to see which things are allowed to flourish. Is it 2 stars? You definitely only watched part of it. You were mainly bored. There was some intrigue or fascination that maybe holds it together, or maybe you're only watching it for the podcast's sake. No matter how unlikely, you just can't convince yourself to like it more than 2 stars. Or is it 1 star? I don't think they're going to answer this, but is it 1 star? Pass on this one, guys. It's a snoozer. It's not good. It's not awesome. This cast was really squandered somehow. There are just much better shows on TV somewhere that you should watch instead. 1 star. Who would like to start the star rating?
I'll start, but I have a question.
Okay, Callie, you are full of the questions today.
I feel like this question should be directed at Hillary, because I feel like the star thing might be her, I don't know, ordeal. Am I allowed to give like half?
Oh, yes.
Totally just do it. It's the best thing ever.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4.5 star. Like I'm in between like, holy smokes, let's do this, and like, yeah, I don't know where they're gonna go. And that's speaking of like seeing the full 2 seasons now. So like, what's gonna happen now? So now I'm at a 4.5 Z's. If it was just the first season, it would be like full on like, yes, you had better watch, girl.
Fair enough. Yes, I was going to say half stars or halfsies. Stars are perfectly okay.
Halfsies.
Just don't get too cute with your fractions. There's somebody named Spencer who likes to, but he's not here, and you don't have to be like him. Continue.
We'll keep it at a 1 or a 1.5, and then 2.
Okay.
We won't go crazy.
Fair enough.
I was literally going to be like, bless, I will do the fraction in his stead, but I can't do the fraction, because if I'm basing it on the first season, I have to say 5 stars.
Yeah.
5 stars for me. Yep. Okay. Pretty darn good. And we'll talk about it.
Holy smokes.
Full agree for season 1. 5 stars. Absolutely love it. Damn near perfect. If we're including season 2 in that, I kind of bump it down to 4 star. But that is going to be due to reasons that will have to be discussed when we talk about season 2.
That is correct.
Mystery.
You totally just did Kylie's line for her.
Which is okay, because P.S. Kylie has not
I gotta keep it wanting more.
Right? P.S. Kylie has not watched the 2nd season, so no spoilers.
Got it.
I'll go next.
Okay.
I agree that if I was just basing it on season 1, I would give it 5 stars.
Okay.
But as a whole, as a show, knowing where it goes, I'm going to give it 4.5. Because I do have to say, unlike other shows, it still keeps its originality. It's just, we kind of start going in circles, which a lot of shows do with season 2, but like we all said, we'll talk about that eventually.
I agree wholeheartedly with everything that everyone has had to say already. 4.5 on the whole, 5 for season 1.
Okay.
I have nothing new. I'm really sorry.
That's okay.
Didn't I say this right from the get-go that this was going to happen? Because it's so good. Anyway, It's fine.
Oh, God.
So I'm at 4 3/4 stars.
Wait a second.
What happened?
I am totally telling Spencer, oh my God, you are never going to hear the end of it.
Hey, at least he does like 3.81275. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, he like pies it. It's hilarious.
What a jerk.
We'll go with 4.
Nerd.
Yeah.
What a weirdo.
We'll go with 4 3/4. I really like it. I'm very nearly at holy smokes, and the ending was fabulous. The last episode of season 1 was out of the park awesome. It took me a minute to get into it. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I just don't think it's like, it didn't necessarily grab me right from moment 1. I probably was moment 60, which is when like the end of the first episode, I was like, all right, I see where this is going, and this could be good, and then it just kept getting better. So that's why I would be at 4 3/4. It's a very, very, very good show, and the cast is outstanding. I can't think of many shows that have a better cast with a bunch of movie stars in it. I mean, it's pretty awesome. So, and we'll talk about why. So, I think a lot of people said they liked the show right away. They binged the heck out of the show. I mean, I did. I watched it very fast as well. It took maybe 2 days for me. I didn't have a day where I could sit the whole thing, but I definitely watched it over 2. So, let's just talk about season 1. What makes it so stellar? Even Eddie said 5 stars for season 1, because you were kind of like lower down on the scale. That's why I said even Eddie. So what makes season 1 such a fabulous season, and what did you like the best about it?
I think it's the chemistry of the characters.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a very strong, dynamic cast that's very well known, and I think going into this, they knew they had to write it like very, very well because of the people that they had. Because people were already going to go into this show like knowing that it was going to be huge because of the cast that they had. I mean, I haven't read the book, but there's also a very big book following that led to this. And I know they talked for a really long time about making it a movie, and they said that it was too complex. So that's how we actually got Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman, because they were going to make it a movie, but it would have been way too complex of a movie. So they made it, I think it was supposed to be a mini-series, but then we wound up getting a season 2, season 1, and then a season 2. So I mean, it's a complex show, so I think that's why it's so good. It's because they had to write it very, very carefully to make it good.
It's important to note that Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman are actually the ones who optioned the rights on the book and created a production company to try to make it a movie, and then converting it to a miniseries and all that business. So they are the producers on the show as well.
And I mean, even the director of the show. Wait, David Kelly's the writer.
David Kelly is the creator. So he has the executive producer credit. Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, isn't even a small person when we're talking about. The Practice, like. One of my second favorite shows, Ally McBeal. Like, there's some big shows that like are credited to the executive producer as well. So like, there's like some very well known names in this show.
And I would also, I just keep thinking like I want to say it because I know we've got Nicole Kidman and we've got Reese Witherspoon and we've got these huge like female star vehicles. But for this show, I expected greatness from those people. Like, I expected it. I expect greatness from Reese Witherspoon. I expect greatness from Nicole Kidman. The two, and I've got to, and Alexander Skarsgård, of course, we love him. We love that vampire, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So, yes, that beautiful vampire. We love him. But there are two that just shocked the hell out of me and knocked it out of the park. And the two are one female and one male, and it's Laura Dern.
Amen.
What happened? Well, like, where did it was like she came out swinging right from the get-go. And incredible acting, incredible person, just amazing. And then the other one, which I expect greatness, but I expect comedy greatness from, is Adam Scott.
Yes.
It was not funny, but he was funny, but he was so real, and he was so serious, and so amazing with Reese Witherspoon. And those two, I just blew my mind. I think, like,
when you're talking about stars as famous as, like, Nicole Kidman. Like, Nicole Kidman has been famous for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's one of those things that sometimes you see that actor or actress in something, and it's almost distracting because you're like, oh my god, it's Nicole Kidman. But she just loses herself in that role in such a fantastic way. And, I mean, apart from just Nicole Kidman, everybody in this cast is phenomenal. And I'm glad we are talking about Adam Scott because I'm such a fan of his. And I think Ed is, like I just believe Ed is living out there somewhere. Like, really, all of these characters, I just believe that they're just out there somewhere, living their lives. I mean, even the dialogue between them doesn't feel super scripted. It feels very... You feel like you're kind of peering in on conversations that could actually be happening.
It feels very natural.
Well, I mean, I agree. Like, even the first episode, like, it just literally feels like even though they're big names, they filmed normal moms going to the school. Like, it was all normal, but it wasn't at the same time. So, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I also agree that it was better than Desperate Housewives. only because of the mystery aspect. I mean, it took, like, Desperate Housewives meets How to Get Away with Murder meets, like, Law and Order. Like, all at the same time. So, I mean, it was, like we've already said, it's a very well scripted show.
I just think the so since we're on that comparison and I'm the one who brought it up, I just think the characters are generally, even when they're not at their most likable, they're more likable than the 4 characters that make up the Desperate Housewives. And maybe because Desperate Housewives is a little bit fantastical in its presentation and really leans in on...
Yeah, it's meant to be more cheeky, I think.
Yeah.
Campy.
Yeah, campy.
Campy.
But there's still that dark comedy strain to this show, so that's why it reminded me a little bit of it, and I just felt like this is everything I wanted Desperate Housewives to be, and it really wasn't at the time. And if you listen to that episode, it's one of our older episodes. Eddie did moderate it. I mean, I jumped the shark on Desperate Housewives. I stopped watching, and I don't jump the shark very often. So that's why I would probably never jump the shark on this show, even if it did go off the rails, just because the characters to me are a little bit more interesting and relatable.
And I never really, my brain always reverts back for Shailene Woodley to the American Teenager thing. And I watched like 2 episodes of that, and I was like, this girl and this thing and whatever is happening right now is terrible. And it's no good. Like, this is no good. But she, for being younger and being thrown in, and she did, I think, do the Divergent series before this.
I mean, she went from, like, action star Divergent to, like, I'm a housewife.
Yeah. So she definitely holds her own, I feel like, amongst these stars that she's with. And then the other one, too, is Zoe Kravitz, who, is this her first thing that she's ever done?
No, it's probably
not her first.
I think it's one of the bigger billings that she's done, but she's done other things.
She was in High Fidelity, and she was also in Divergent.
Oh yeah, High Fidelity. Oh, she was in Divergent too.
And she was in that Mad Max movie with
Cherry Road.
Tom Hardy and
Mad Max. So I mean, it's not like it's their first rodeo, and they're holding their own. And I also have to give a shout out, which if you know me and theater, one of the things I hate and love all at the same time is talented children.
So true.
I hate them and I love them, and I hate them and I love them, and it's an endless cycle. But the children too, especially the one that plays Madeline, Reese Witherspoon's teenage daughter, is fantastic. The children are fantastic. The acting is incredible for this show, and they all work so well together, and it's like this perfect harmony of perfect. And then Alexander Skarsgård being terrible and horrible and mean and
yeah, so let's talk about that, because, like, you know, like, big hearts for him. Like, he's on my list.
I know.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm just having so many mixed emotions about it.
Define list.
Go ahead. Okay, my sister moderator's raising her hand. Yes?
Define list. You're 5, or is there...
Oh,
one?
No. One has been Chris Evans for like the last.
Oh, Chris Evans.
years.
Oh, yes, I knew that. Yes.
Eddie is clapping for me. Yeah, I was way on that train before most people.
Movie, honey. That's all I'm gonna say.
He's a beautiful vampire.
But like, I fell in love with Alexander Skarsgård because I watched True Blood like in real time from the first episode.
Me too.
Oh my gosh.
Me too.
Yeah, I like lots of different things. So, I mean, I've been in love with him for forever. But yeah, to see, I mean, he's been in other things. He's done other things. But this was such a departure from some of those other things. Mm-hmm. And yes, it was very conflicting. It was like watching David Tennant and Jessica Jones. Because I love...
yes.
Yeah.
Because I big crush on him too. But it's like, you shouldn't, but you still can't help it. But then, like, your brain knows how well of a performance they're giving. Mm. It's like a full circle going on. But I believed everything that was happening.
He's such a good actor. He is such a good actor. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. He's so good.
He did carry a lot of depth and a lot of nuance. Like, he's not... And I think that really goes a long way in showing like how complex that relationship is and how it's very much not a black and white situation. And I think that's why it's so powerful and it's so well done, is the situation that these two characters are in is very nuanced, and particularly the performances that each of them are giving are so nuanced and have so much depth. Because I think they really, again, if this had been in lesser hands, if they had gone the one-dimensional route that, you maybe think you would get just kind of reading the synopsis, he could have been like a, one-dimensional villainous bad guy, but like you get a lot more insight into his psyche and, potentially why he's doing the things he's doing and how their relationship has developed.
It was kind of I also love Alexander Skarsgård. He's not my top 5. He's probably my top 25, though.
Whoa.
I have a big number. Look, you know what? I'll limit my hall passes when I have to. Okay, that's all I have to say.
He just likes to list the crap out of things anyway.
Doesn't matter.
It's a list.
He belongs. The fact that he's on the list is what is relevant. But yeah, it was almost a gut punch to see how crazy good he was, how convincing he was as this, yes, complex, but ultimately wholly abusive person. And I suspended disbelief, but golly, there was still a little bit of a part of the back of my brain that was going, oh my God, that's Alexander Skarsgård.
What's presented in this show, it can go, especially with like Celeste and Perry's relationship, it can go like what we're being presented is not, I guess, like stereotypical of what we might have seen in other forms of media of what an abusive relationship might look like.
It's very raw.
It's very raw and it's very grayscale. It's not a black and white situation, and like there is love there, and it's just, it makes it all the more complicated, and it helps you sort of understand Celeste's perspective and understand why maybe she felt like she couldn't really explain what was going on to people or tell people exactly what was going on. Especially like with her background, like she's a lawyer, like she's educated. She knows that this sort of thing shouldn't be going on, yet it still resides.
And with two small children, too. Two small children, 2 little boys who you don't know,
Well, that's why I really enjoy the scenes when she goes back by herself to see the counselor.
Yeah.
Because that's the best example of what you just said, Julianne, because she's literally, it's like in her face, you can read that she is fully aware of everything the counselor is actually going to say to her. The responses that she's going to get.
She knows.
But ultimately, she still is spinning in that circle. She can't quite explain it.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of that scene, she ends up walking out on her because she's like, listen, I already told you. And he doesn't, the kids, supposedly, The kids don't know. They don't see it. But obviously that's her being a little bit in denial herself.
Because
but
they do see it.
It's still that full circle of what Julianne just explained. And you see it all happen just in that one scene.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess, because I think before we started recording, Eddie made a comment, maybe in certain ways he thought it was predictable for him. But I think for me, I was so drawn into the dynamic of this back and forth that it did completely distract me from where it was ultimately going. Now, normally I Sherlock Holmes the crap out of all that too, but I was so invested in what was happening directly.
Yeah.
And watching Celeste and watching Madeline try to help Celeste, but also obviously each one of their own individual scenarios, and then how it came together.
Right.
That, like, I didn't see the punchline coming for me.
I just want to say that when I say that it was predictable in the fact that it was a murder. It was like Housewives. It was... What I like about the show is how they, like what you just said, that how they took everybody's story and they actually, what made it really good is they actually showed everybody's story. And like, I mean, we talked about it and we've talked about the abusiveness that happened in the season. And what I love about the show, which is also horrible in real life, is that kids know more than we give them credit for.
Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and every kid wants to be like their parents when they grow up, and knowing that this child is doing exactly what the parent is doing at home, at school, like that's huge. And that's the big psychological piece of the show that I love, is that they just dive into so many aspects of life that are psychological that we tend to in shows either make comedy relief of, or we kind of just like blow over them and we don't want to talk about them. And the show actually talks about them. So the predictable piece for me was Housewives, someone's going to be murdered. Like when the show started and like you see the fundraiser scene, I was like, yep, someone's going to die. Honestly, I'm not going to lie. I was like, someone's husband's going to die. It's probably going to be a cheating scenario. Then the wife's going to be the one the ex-wife's the one that's going to kill. Like, that's what I predicted. I mean, I'm not going to lie. 3 episodes in, I was like, yep, someone's going to die in this. I mean, it's called Big Little Lies for a reason. I mean,
well, sure.
And I'm not discarding that. I just meant the ultimate, like, who it was, what, because I mean, of course, they were alluding to that the whole time. There were flash forwards, all that sort of thing. But
the interviews with the
exactly.
people in the town.
So, sure, definitely. But it's just that ultimate. But going back to your reflection of like the kids with their parents and so on and so, I mean, just the way they set that up with like the opening credits. I mean, they have like them at that fundraiser scene, they're all dressed up and they're all walking towards the camera, and then it shows the kids kind of bouncing towards
cute and
I mean, they're literally already describing that mirroring in the opening credits with that super great song selection.
So good.
So good.
The opening sequence is one of my favorite parts of the whole show. Just every time the credits come on, I love watching them.
And what Hillary is saying too reminds me of flipping back to, like, to piggyback off of that, is when we get to that last episode, we've got a wife who's being abused. We've got Shailene Woodley now, who has realized that she's been raped by Alexander Skarsgård. So now we have a huge mess of a situation. And then we have Zoe Kravitz with like this burning fire in her eyes, realizing what is happening, and then totally shoving him down the stairs. And is anybody surprised that she would do that? I'm not surprised that she would do that.
I think
she understood. She saw it. She realized what was happening.
I really thought Bonnie was an underrated character in this series until the last 2 episodes. Yeah. Like I thought she was a great character, but I was like, she really needs more time. Like I really think she needed more time.
I think that they did it. Oh no, you're good. I think they honestly did that deliberately.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's what I'm getting at. Is like. That's why I'm not shocked that it was her, because like her story, like I always wanted more from Bonnie. She was such a good character. And when we did get interactions with her, I'm like, why are we cutting this short? Well, there's a reason they were cutting her short, because of what she did, and we didn't know about it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a super fighter fight. I mean, we totally skipped right to the end, but...
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I could see Kylie's moderator face being like, okay.
This is where we're going. Sorry. My brain went, whoop.
All I want to say is just speak one at a time. You're all getting very excited, but Zoom can't handle it, so one at a time.
Bonnie's fight or flight moment in that was great. I mean, I think one of the cool things that I love about her character is that somehow because she married Nathan, she ended up in the midst of this circle. I don't think that that is, of course, probably not what she was bargaining for, and then she ended up, because I feel in a lot of ways she kind of moderated a little bit in those scenarios, and then she witnessed all of that take place. Like, she saw Perry's behavior at the part, and it was fight or flight, and she took action, and I thought I didn't see it happening. Like, it was just so great the way that they shot it. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Something I really like about how they did all of that is, like, because, in the first episode, it starts off with the scenes of the aftermath, at the party, and it's like, there has been a murder, and then it cuts away completely to the first day of school, and you're thrown into this other conflict where Ziggy, Jane's son, was accused of bullying Renata, Laura Dern's character's daughter, and that, sets off this huge chain of events, and it's so complex and so well done to the point where, like, you kind of forget about the murder until they drop in those little interview moments, and you're like, oh yeah, somebody's dead. But I remember the first time watching it too being like, hey, are they gonna say who died? Are we gonna get to find out who died? And the show is like, nope, you get to find out who died and who killed them in the same moment, and that's gonna be in about the last 10 to 15 minutes of the last episode. You're gonna have to watch this whole show to even find out who died.
Yeah. I while I would like you said, you kind of forget if you're being taken along for the ride, and I really enjoy being taken along for the ride of this show, because there are times where I know something like that is going to happen. Obviously, they set it up in the beginning, but I never felt very an urgency to get there. I didn't feel like, oh, I need to know, I must know, this was a mystery I needed to unravel, and I really appreciated that about this show. I was just kind of along for the ride and cared way more about lives of these women that typically I think I would write off, just looking at them from a surface level.
I agree. Yeah. I forgot that there were, I know, like you said, we learned that there's a murder, very early on, but, there were times where even when they, would hint at it, that I was like, nope, I just want to know more about these women and, why they're friends, how they're friends, and, what keeps them being friends. So,
yeah, there's so much happening in their lives.
Right.
Much happening. So,
I love how the show makes it where they should be friends because they live in the same community, where they hate each other, but they really all love each other. Where, in actuality, I would not be shocked if, one of the women killed each other because, they get mad at that. I wouldn't be shocked. So, yeah, I agree that, I didn't forget that there was a murder. There were times where I'm like, oh, and this is what I also love about a show, is that there was times where I was like, oh, is this a clue to what's going to happen at the end? And you, try to remember it. But I also have to say the show wasn't confusing. It wasn't a circle show. And I'm gonna use this as an example because I jumped shark on this show, and this show actually did this. How to Get Away with Murder kind of sets itself up with how this show does it. Is you start with what happens, but you don't really know what happens, and they lead up to it. However, that show circles around so much, and you get so many different timelines that it's really hard to put it together. Where this show kind of, it flash forwards, but it flash forwards in a way that makes sense. And then it flash back. And I greatly appreciate that because I have to say it makes it easy to watch, and it makes it easy to continue watching.
And to understand, you don't lose the storylines of different people because they're jumping all over the place. Another one that does it, of course, is American Horror Story. Eddie, you know that. Sometimes there's so many character stories that you can't keep track of each one, and each one is different every episode. So it doesn't do that. It keeps a really nice flow so you don't get distracted and you can understand what's happening.
But it's also entertaining at the same time.
And it's entertaining, yeah.
You know what I think is kind of helpful to that flow and that pacing is that the snapshot that we're looking at in their lives is not very long. Like, I think the course of this first season is it a week? Like, it's pretty, like,
it's a month.
It's a month? Okay,
it's short.
It's short.
Yeah.
It's more than that. It's a few months. I know, at least in the book takes place over, like, several months. Because each section kind of starts off, like the first section is 5 months before the trivia night. So I don't know if they're necessarily following the same timeline as the book, but the book is over like 5-6 months.
That's in the Wikipedia. Let me look.
Which is like, even if it's a few months, it's
still short.
It's still short, which I think gives you an opportunity to look at more of a detailed look into their lives.
I'm also going to say it again. How to Get Away with Murder was a whole school year, and there was a lot that happened in a whole school year. That's all I'm going to say.
I might have watched the first episode of that. Continue.
I do think this show, though, understands the difference between, like, trying to pack a lot in and, like, where with some shows where they try to keep your interest by just, like, throwing as many things as they can at you.
Quantity versus quality.
Yeah, it really is. I think they really do understand that with this show, is that, like, they understand that, like, quality and depth and, like, just really good character and plot development is going to keep people interested and ultimately be much more satisfying rather than if, they just try to throw things at the audience.
Absolutely. There's a lot of time spent in this show in purely, like, reaction shots. Like, there's a lot of time spent in the car from the backseat, like, almost from the kid perspective, looking at the mother. And right, and that's where the music comes in and kind of takes over for that storytelling. When there's not actual dialogue on screen happening, there's still a lot of storytelling happening just by those reaction shots.
So I'm going to relate that to, another show that we just talked about. It's kind of like that, the same, like, quality caliber of Breaking Bad a little bit to me. Like, it's up there. I mean, Breaking Bad is still, to me, like, top tier, but it's still in that same route where they're just using so much of that visual aspect to draw, and you get that very real first-hand perspective as the audience. And it's so much better than some of the other shows that have been already referenced. So it just adds to the payoff by the time you get to the end.
I'm hearkening back to much earlier, because you've taken a lot of tributaries with your effusive praise about Big Little Lies, but one of the things that Callie said quite a few minutes ago was how surprised she was by Laura Dern. I think Laura Dern is a massively underrated actress.
I agree.
Overall.
Yeah. Amen.
And she's been in she's been in high profile projects, like, for example, Jurassic Park, where you can see she's got seeds of this acting, but it's in a genre type vehicle, and so you may not necessarily be focused on it. Whereas in this particular project, she had a chance to basically bust out and shine alongside the rest of the women in the ensemble. I was not surprised by it. I actually thought she was amazing. Of course, Renata is probably the least likable of the 5 women, but that's why it's so good. And I mean, she ended up winning a massive ton of awards. She's one of the 3. Nicole and Alexander, like I mentioned in the intro, were the other 2. And it didn't surprise me one bit. I was very mesmerized by the Renata character because they did take time to explore her character so that you got the sense that she wasn't just a high maintenance Karen type, if you will, that she really had motivations and thoughts and layers that came from her home life. And the Big Little Lies of the title of the book and the series is such a fun way to title it, because ultimately you're watching each of these women and how everything is the facade versus the real. And we're talking about how it feels so real as we're watching it, but that's just because when we're watching everybody else in our lives or watching other TV, it's all about the facade. This is actually peeling back the onion and saying, no, this is the real life, only with these very dark and gritty situations as the underbelly. So I just wanted to mention that. And I also wanted to say Adam Scott, since Julianne, you mentioned him. I love him. I love him.
I love him
every
too.
single thing he is in. I love him.
Me too. I love him too.
I mean, he's so good.
He's so good.
He can do anything.
It's crazy. He's so funny. He's adorable. He's an incredible actor. Mm-hmm. He can be serious when he needs to. He's awesome. He's awesome.
Which makes me want
I mean, just some of his reactions to Madeline during their first family dinner, I was like dying, because I actually would probably be saying some of the same shit that he was saying.
They're so perfect to me too. Like, him and Reese Witherspoon together seems just so perfect.
Yes.
Like a perfect match.
Yeah.
Like, it just works.
I would never have come up with it on my own. No. But like after if they were like, if you could mash up Reese Witherspoon with anyone, I don't know that I necessarily would have come up with Adam Scott.
Totally.
Never. Having seen them together, I'm like, oh my god, this is perfect.
Mm-hmm. It works.
Yeah, and I think it's so perfect too for like their relationship, because Madeline is the one who will kind of like spin off into these other scenarios, and he's the one who's kind of the steadier personality, you know.
Eddie.
They're having their own issues within their marriage, and he's kind of like, hey, like, I am my own person, like, I can't only be here for you to be your rock, like, I do, like, you know, this is a two-way street kind of thing. So yeah, their relationship dynamic was so interesting.
It's interesting, and it's like incredibly believable too, like almost painful. Like, so I feel a lot for his character. Yes. Like, I know he's not always super likable in that show, but he's more because likable. You know what Madeline has done.
Right. He's more likable than
and you
she
see
is.
How much he absolutely loves her. Yeah. It's like painful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's more likable than she is. I kept comparing this character to like Elle in Legally Blonde. If she's
an adult Elle.
She's an adult Elle. If she had not gone down the right road and you know, devoted herself, fell in love with herself, and got the Harvard degree. If she had gone the other way and stayed in all of her pink and you know, married the dude, whatever his name was.
Reese Witherspoon speaking, though, I do enjoy her. I do. I enjoy her acting in this. I think that it's very adult Reese Witherspoon. I thought it was mature, and I thought it was in a mature Elle sort of way, which I like. I like that.
I think that Madeline's character is maybe the most like outwardly compassionate towards the other women.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's what she is like presenting, is like as an advocate for this group of women, especially like how she befriends Jane. Like, her befriending Jane is actually like very genuine.
No, I was gonna say they're just projecting a lot of their negative qualities. Mm-hmm. And as their stories start to intertwine, and as Kylie said, you start to peel back the onions, you're seeing a lot of their genuine, like even Renata by the end. I mean, she knows in the end that she was totally wrong, and she doesn't even hesitate she goes right up to her and she says, I am so literally from the get-go, you're seeing a lot of, like I said, just this very deliberate sides of their personalities. And because I felt like most of them, except for like Jane and Celeste, I was like, what? Because this is not, I would say that I probably wouldn't normally watch. I watch a lot of dramas, but in this kind of like pocket, I don't think I usually do. So, and it's because of that, but the way that they develop them and show that just that human quality come together for each other by the end that's what really drove it for me.
Only if he was really singing. That's all I'm going to say.
Right? If that was really Adam Scott singing.
Oh, and so well-rounded.
I think it was.
Can do it all.
A Renaissance man. Was that actually him singing that?
I think it was.
It wasn't.
How do you know?
No, it wasn't. I looked it up like when it happened, when I watched it to see. I was like, really?
Of course he did. No, it was not.
It was not.
Of course he did.
Research it.
Yes, it was.
But I think it was. That's not what I said. I said I think it was, but
no, it wasn't. It was not him singing.
I know. I'm responding to my sister. #dynamics.
I'm literally just trying to get her riled up, so.
And that's what's happening.
But it seems like, y'all.
Objective fulfilled.
That pot.
Sure, girl. You know what? Shailene Woodley, too, she was in... Did anyone ever see The Descendants with George Clooney?
I think I did, but a long time ago.
Because that's when I mean, it kind of reminded me, it was kind of along that wavelength in terms of, like, her character acting. I just felt... I mean, yeah. I did feel terrible for her, obviously, from the first. I mean, this poor woman, she walks right into this... She's trying to walk out of a situation. She walks right into another. And I think they did a really good job of exploring the PTSD of something like that.
No, I enjoyed her. I really did.
Yeah.
I enjoyed her.
She reminds...
Like I said, I didn't like her in previous things, but in this, I was like, well done. Well done, lady.
I'm curious how the development, because now I almost kind of want to read the book, not that I have a lot of time, but how does the development of the book, or how does it vary from the way that the episodes develop? Or is it comparable?
It's pretty similar. Like, the main differences, there are, like, a few main differences between the book and the show, and I think for the most part, I feel like the changes that the show made work better for the story, and one is like maybe a little superficial. I mean, the most obvious one is that it takes place in Australia. Liane Moriarty is Australian, so moving it to Monterey, moving it to America, I feel like probably makes it a little bit more, in some ways, you know, having a show set in America makes it a little bit more universal in a way, like, because so much TV is set in America, you know, that's kind of like the default, but it's also, I think, by setting it in Monterey is very localized, and I think they do a good job of, like, making you feel like you're in this, like, you know, idyllic seaside town. Another one of the big differences is that in the book, Renata is not really a viewpoint character. You don't get to see things from her point of view. You're really only seeing things from the point of view of Jane, Celeste, or Madeline, and I think that the fact that they fleshed Renata out and kind of gave her own storyline and her own development makes the story a lot stronger, and like makes the ending where her and Jane reconcile a lot more satisfying. And then I think the other really big change that they made is that at the end in the book, Bonnie comes forward and confesses and like gets community service, which when I read it I was like, I don't like that as much.
Well,
I like the kind of like,
we couldn't have a second season if she did
exactly. Like the second season would have never happened if they had stuck with the book ending. Not to try to, like, you know, but I don't think that's really a spoiler for Kylie. No. But I think that it's a much stronger ending, having them, you know, hanging on to the secret altogether, and I think that speaks a lot better to the themes of the book / show of like female solidarity and coming together to support each other and to protect each other. And then it also just kind of creates this sort of open-ended, you know, are they going to get away with it? I don't know. And like the book is like, we're going to lie. We're all going to lie. And they're all super nervous about lying, particularly Ed, because in the book, a couple of the husbands also witness what happens, and Ed is one of them. And Ed is like, I don't think I can lie. And then they're like, preparing to lie, and then it's like, oh, never mind, Bonnie came forward. And I was like, I don't think I like that as much. Again, the book is very good. I highly recommend it. I was actually reading it over Mother's Day weekend while I was home with my mom, and it felt both weird and appropriate at the same time, because obviously like it spoke about motherhood and about mothers and all that stuff, but my mom was like, oh, what's that about? And I was like, Mom, we don't have time.
I don't have time for this.
Wow. We're not gonna spend our Mother's Day together having me explain the entire plot of this book to you. No, it's still very good, and like, yeah, most of those plot points, and as far as like development goes, it follows it pretty closely. Most of those same story beats are still there. So yeah, the changes from the book are in some ways big and in some ways small, like, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not like they are completely changing the plot, but they made some tweaks that I think makes it better overall. That tells us.
Well, I mean, that's good to hear. A lot of times when you were talking about adaptations, you don't usually hear it being advantageous on the flip side. So
Yeah.
I know, as a fellow English major. What? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know that there's a season 2, and I don't know how to say this to make it sound like it was bad, and it's not, but I feel like we could have just had season 1, and I would have felt, and I would have felt satisfied.
Like a mini-series, like a true mini-series?
It ended so well, and I was so, like, okay with it, where once we got told that there was going to be a season 2, I was like, oh, okay, like, I was happy to watch it, but, like, season 1, it just ended in a way that I felt was organic. And if
there's that word again.
I know, right? If they would have not had a season 2, I wouldn't have been like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this?
Yeah.
That's just, I just feel like it could have ended at season 1, and I would have been okay with it.
I agree with that, because it kind of left me thinking. I mean, I was more in a thought-provoked like stage, like, what would I do in that scenario?
Right.
Type of thing. It, instead of just having everything fed to you, it left that kind of open, and maybe, I don't know, maybe not everybody thinks that way, but that is one of the few shows that I really, after it was done, thinking like, wow, what would I do in all of those scenarios? Which is pretty awesome when a story can do that. So
yeah.
I was also really happy that it's almost, I hate to make this like sorority girl fandom, but like it's almost like Bonnie did it to make herself worthy of the other women, and that's the way she did it, as in like, I am one of you, I am a fierce woman, and I can take care of y'all just like y'all try to take care of each other. Like I said, like I feel like her story, like she always got the end of everything. Like she wasn't always, like we didn't always get everything with her through the show. So like when we found out that it was her, I was like, oh, well, that's how she showed the girls, I'm here, I'm powerful, and I can do it. Like maybe that was just
# women supporting women.
Right. Thank you.
Kill your abusive husband. A country song.
I don't know if I thought she was. I don't know if she was fighting to be a part of them so much. I think part of her, like maybe a little bit, I kind of just interpreted her in that moment, seriously, like I said earlier, just being in the fight. Like she saw what was happening. She witnessed, she was observing it happen in slow motion. Right. And she chose the fight option.
That's my perspective. That was my perspective too, was that she saw it and she was like, nope, and needed to do. Yeah.
Well, with everything that you know about Bonnie up until that point, she's almost the least expected one. Like, you would almost expect, like, maybe Madeline more than Bonnie, which is kind of perfect because Bonnie and Madeline are positioned in such a way, like, between the relationship with Nathan, that, like, Bonnie is sort of opposite of everything Madeline is, and Madeline is so type A and so controlling that in a situation like that, you might expect Madeline to take the control. So that's what I think is really interesting about it being Bonnie, and it's hard to talk about, like, why without talking about season 2, so we will not, but I think that's what makes, like, that, like, Bonnie the one sort of, like, unexpected about that.
Yeah. Well, like, another example of their polar opposites is when Madeline's daughter is trying to, like, sell her virginity for...
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
And just the different personalities / parenting styles in that scenario alone, it's another great example of that. Because, like, for real, I mean, I would straight up be in Madeline. I feel like I would be in I don't think I could be in Bonnie's mindset in something like that, but then I could see myself being, I feel like I might even be in Bonnie's mindset for that last portion, but I don't know, because it's one of those things, what would you do type of thing. So I have no idea, but it's fascinating to watch them play off each other and see what's going to happen. So, also, I don't really get what they see in Nathan, because I don't like him.
He was on revenge. That's Amanda Clark's dad.
They both getting all, like, totally all tweaked.
Gaga. Gaga over
and I'm like, why?
I think for Madeline, I think it's resentment for Madeline. I don't think that it's like she wants him back or anything like
I know.
that. Like I definitely think that is resentment at the fact that, like, when their teenage daughter, who was going to sell her virginity online, was little and he walked out on them, like, she had to do everything on her own. like she had to be a single mother, she had to like go it alone, and then watching him be a very involved husband and parent to his second wife and to his second daughter, I think builds up a lot of resentment in her, and the fact that like their daughter not only goes to the same school but is in the same class as her younger daughter, like, you know, they're kind of constantly thrown together. So yeah, for her, I think it's definitely trying to let go of that resentment.
Yeah. Well, the resentment's very clear in the earlier episodes when she's going on about Nathan and Bonnie, and then Ed's finally like, what is your deal? Like, why can't you let this go? Is he your one? I want to be your one. Like,
Yeah.
You know, going back to like the point of like, what do they see in Nathan? I almost feel like it's less about what they see in Nathan and more about what Nathan sees in Bonnie that isn't Madeline. Again, I don't want to go too much into season 2, but like, I think if I had to like put together sort of a backstory in my mind about how Nathan and Bonnie came together, like, Bonnie is truly everything that Madeline is not. You know, she's a lot more laid back, a lot more relaxed. You know, you could see how, like, Nathan could fall in love with somebody like that because it's just the polar opposite of everything Madeline is, wanting to control everything.
Wow, there's very few, so it's so funny. I have to mention this now because prior to starting this recording, a couple of you were like, this is going to be boring. I'm not going to have anything to say. We're all going to agree. It's just going to be, the show is good, bada bing, bada boom. I haven't had to moderate a thing for like the past 20 minutes.
Really true.
Oh my god.
Also, we're just awesome.
There is that too, but I also am glad that we're splitting out the seasons because I feel like we've covered a lot in this first season, and I don't even know what I could add because I agree with the general observations about all of the characters. I agree with the pacing on the show is very, very good. It's one of the best paced shows I've seen in a while. The mystery is very good. At the end of the season, because I know this was talked about earlier in kind of this last stream, that you felt, I think Eddie mentioned it, you felt complete, like you didn't necessarily need a second season. And I agree with that. But at the same time, there are parts that I do wonder about, like, and we've been meditating on Bonnie being the least expected one to kind of jump into the fray and push him down the stairs. But that also created a question for me, like, what the hell lit that fire for her in the moment? Was it just supporting, women supporting women, or was there something else that I'm probably going to learn in season 2? And that question lingered there for me because she was kind of I don't want to say a non-entity, but she was definitely, of the 5, the least focused on throughout most of the season, except as a device to hold up to Madeline and say, well, here are 2 diametrically opposed characters who, kind of like this Nathan dude. And I think Hillary's original point was, what would anybody see in him at any point? Not necessarily.
She is correct. 100%. But I'm all about deep diving that character dynamic.
All I could think of was, that's Amanda Clark's dad, the one who never should have been actually alive. # spoiler, listen to our Looking Back at Revenge podcast. Okay.
I was like, what?
Eddie and Kelly are so cute. They're like, what have I done?
Why? So, all in all, the summary is Big Little Lies Season 1 is complex, complicated, engaging, riveting, and ultimately very good TV that everyone seems to enjoy. So what was your favorite revelation after all of that? We mentioned a lot of the revelations. Any favorites that you have?
I think it's only my favorite because of how, and I mentioned it already before, is I think it's only my favorite because of how dynamic it makes the show, is when we find out that, oh my gosh, I think his name's Max, the kids, I'm so sorry, Max, doing exactly what his father is doing. That's still my favorite part of the show because it just shows the real psychology of being, that not only is the mom being abusive, but like ultimately the children are being abused even though they're not being touched.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because I actually went back and rewatched it real quick because I haven't watched it in a really long time. And I was able to pick on more of the nuance, and I was able to see more of the foreshadowing this time around. So I totally agree with what Eddie just said. But again, I'm going to say just for the acting portion of it, when Perry shows up in that final scene and then you see Jane's connection moment.
Mm-hmm. That was my favorite.
Because she had, obviously there were other times when, they thought it could have been maybe some other dude, like the Baxton other dude, they thought maybe it was
Baxton Baker.
Yeah. Yes. And she kept trying to connect it, like she was trying really hard to, is this the guy? And then when she has that visual representation and seeing it, kind of like Julianne was talking about, like, seeing the reactions in the car, whatnot. It's just another one of those moments, and for me, that's what's completely sold it for me. Just that moment right there.
That realization.
Yep.
I agree. I think that's my favorite revelation too, especially because how it relates to like Jane's storyline, where she spent so much time worrying that because of how Ziggy was conceived and like who his father was, that Ziggy was going to turn out to be the same way. But he's obviously like a really sweet, empathetic boy. And the kind of nature versus nurture.
I was just going to say, all the nature versus nurture psychology played out.
Yeah, how that played out, because like Ziggy and Max have the same father, but they have obviously been raised in very different environments. Like, obviously, each of them have had different struggles. Like, it's not as if Ziggy's life is perfect by all means, but he does have a very loving, involved parent in Jane, and like she is such a good parent too. Like, she gets a lot of flack for being young and single from the other moms, but like watching her interact with Ziggy, she is such a good parent. And the nature versus nurture of that, where they've been raised in these slightly separate environments and have kind of taken on the kind of personalities of their parents, like for better or for worse.
I agree with everything she just said.
Yep, same. I mean, and like Jane is, part of the reason why Ziggy is such an emotionally intelligent young boy. Mm-hmm. And I mean, just even the fact that he can pick up on her facial cues, because he says something to her like, I can, like, anytime I ask you about this, I can see your face change. That, like, she's been
empathetic.
Right. He's empathetic. Yeah. He is she has been as emotionally honest with him as she could be up until that point. So,
or even just the moment when she takes him to the beach and he's like, okay, Mom, the last time we had like this picnic and pizza, it's because we were moving to Monterey. So like, what's going on?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And she just levels with him.
Yes.
Yep. She just tells him, like, we're going to see a child psychologist. We're going to go in, going to ask you some questions. Like, such a good parenting moment from her. Like, she's obviously trying to protect her son, but she's also not necessarily, like, coddling him or shielding him in a way that's going to end up having a negative impact. She is as honest with him as she can be, or feels like she can be in that particular situation. And I think that's a huge, huge reason why Ziggy is as well adjusted as he is.
Yeah, because I think for the most part, I think one of the biggest things is that I think there's a couple moments where she slips, but for the most part, she remains the most diplomatic, for sure, amongst all of these different events taking place. So even though she's kind of being, like, semi-supported and attacked from different angles, she's still finding a way to see that bigger picture and all for Ziggy, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Wow. I know. Who haven't we deep dive it? Did we talk about Celeste really deeply? Because a little bit
in the beginning.
I mean, kind of in the beginning,
Yeah. Ultimately, I'll say it again, Celeste is my favorite character. I don't know why. It's not because
she's just she's smart, she is sweet, she's very likable, I think, as a person.
I literally was going to say that. You took the words out of my mouth. She's likable. Oh, likable.
I really appreciate the way that the show doesn't try to elicit pity for her. Like, obviously, you feel really bad for her in the situation that she's in, but I think in a way that you would feel bad for like anyone you know that is in a similar situation. Like because they do such a good job of developing her and making her feel like a whole complex person. It's not like, oh, look at this poor sad woman who's being abused by her husband, like pity her and making her small. I think the show does a really good job of like making her complex, showing how conflicted she is, how much she wants to protect her children, how much she wants to help her friends and support her friends. I really appreciated that.
I love how they make her a dynamic character in the fact of she's not an emotional like roller coaster, but you feel that emotional like tide that she has with where she's trying to deal with her personal life, her friends' lives, but it's also very real. Like she has something intense going on and she doesn't want anybody to know. But like it's almost like she wants them to know, but she doesn't want to tell them. And I think that's why you fall in love with her, because it's so relatable. Like we go through things in life that we want people to know, but we don't exactly want them to know. And I mean, I agree. Celeste is probably one of my favorite characters as well. And I feel like Celeste, we never get anything from Celeste that we don't expect. Like she's this very strong character that she from the beginning, she's just dynamic when we first meet her. And she's very rigid in the fact of that I'm the friend, I have this family, I have to stay professional at all times. Like this is what I have. But it's not like a reputation thing either. And hopefully I'm making sense and not going in circles. I'm trying not to. But I really like the fact that when she kind of does break down, she's still a strong, dynamic woman. And she makes the fact of breaking down normal.
Yeah.
I love
and expressing those feelings. It's normal. And it's not that I'm doing this because of like how you already touched base on is pity me, pity me, pity me.
Yeah, it's not a weakness.
It's not.
Yeah,
it's
not weak.
The fact of that she's breaking down because it's hard to choose between loving someone that you love and loving yourself. And ultimately, that's why I think she breaks down, because she realizes I have to love myself.
I love your use of the word dynamic, because I think that hits it on the head for me. It isn't just that she's likable. There's something truly electric about this character and her performance. And, I like Nicole Kidman, but I wouldn't call myself a huge fan of her. I think all too often she plays an ingenue type character where always a heroine, she doesn't often play a villain. She has played...
Except for Paddington.
True.
Really?
There is that.
She's the villain in the first Paddington movie, and you can tell she is having so much fun.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, I need to watch that now.
You do. Greatest films ever made. Greatest films ever made. Paddington and Paddington 2.
She's like, I am so there on Paddington.
I'm there after
really
that.
am. Number one Paddington fan. For real. You could ask all my friends. It's like basically my entire personality. I got them all hooked on Marmalade. It's the whole thing.
But I was going to say, this isn't even her first complex psychological role. Like, she's been in a handful, including Eyes Wide Shut, with her ex-husband, the now Scientologist, crazy man, whatever. But, things. So it's not even It's not even the first time that she's done a character like this, but I feel like this is the best time that she's ever done a character like this. And this is, in fact, one of the best characters she's ever played, because it's multi-dimensional and it is dynamic, and there's something that she's channeling in this performance that is so much more. And it's strength. It's not weakness, it's strength, but she just has sort of a next level quality about her in this performance that makes Celeste relatable even when she's not relatable. Does that make sense?
I think it's...
Are you saying that she may have been drawing from some of her personal, maybe not to the extremity of what happens with Perry, but...
There's an interview she does, and she says that she took the fact that she was abused as being, like, younger from, like, Hollywood perspective.
Oh.
That she, like...
Yeah, she probably wouldn't call out Tom straight away.
Probably not.
I'm just saying.
I mean, they're not listening, but if they are, tweet at us, CPM Podcast. Sarah's not here. I gotta pick up the slack.
Something that I think is
That's
also...
an awkward tweet, but sure.
I already prefaced it by saying they're probably not listening.
Now, you just said that, but...
Our first tweet's gonna be from Nicole Kidman. Or Tom Cruise.
So something that I think is also really helpful in understanding Celeste's character is getting to witness her going to therapy. And I think, like, therapy is not always, like, super well done in television and movies, but I think, like, this is a case where, like, it is, and it's also very endearing to her because you are watching her realize the lies that she's been telling herself in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it makes it a lot more helpful to, like, empathize with her and really truly understand what she's going through. And also, like, I appreciate watching a character go to therapy, and it was helpful for them.
I really like, I like
agree.
the word that comes to mind when she goes to therapy is the word raw. It
Yeah.
literally is raw, endearing, and it, like you said, I really like how you described it as real time. Like, it's almost like you finally, like, catch on with her that, wow, this is actually really happening. And, like, she's been putting blinders up for a really, really long time because it's the loving fact where I think I fell in love with her is the fact that she wanted to stay with him because of her kids, because of her family, because she really actually does love the man, you know? So it's very powerful and very raw that these are real situations that people deal with on a day-to-day basis.
One of my favorite scenes with her actually is after she went back into her lawyer role, helping Madeline with the Avenue Q.
Oh yeah.
And then she gets into the car and she's so proud of herself in that moment because she felt just so good and alive again. And then she has another bit of a breakdown moment and she says to Madeline, like, is this, like, terrible of me? I need this. It's not enough for me sometimes just being a mom. And again, to have that kind of very bluntly discussed too and not shied away from, I enjoyed all of that. And Madeline being like, no, that's okay. You're not a bad person. Like, that's a normal feeling. That's actually one of my favorite moments between those two as well.
Same.
I agree. I love that scene.
Same. I love that.
I think that scene is what really cemented the feminism of the show for me, because I think, especially in this day and age, like, there's so much, like, hashtag, like, girl boss, feminism, like, strong, like, quote unquote strong female characters. It feels very contrived where they don't feel like real people. And I think this show really understands that women are complex. We don't all make the same decisions for ourselves. We don't all want the same things. Not all of the same, like, life choices are going to be satisfactory depending, on the individual. And that's something I really appreciated about this show is that they treat all the female characters with complexity and nuance and depth.
Yeah, because one of my least favorite, like, almost, I mean, it's kind of almost becoming cliche now, is that instead of just using original female characters, whether they're being adapted or they're just, like, 100% original, is just turning male characters into female instead of, not because females can't do those characters, but it's almost you're still taking away from the point just because you're trying to explore that to fit what's the word I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but that's becoming too common nowadays where, we're just going to make this male character female. To me, that's not enough sometimes. Again, not that it's not a possibility or, like, women can't take on those roles, but it's nice to just see the originality.
It's like you're saying they're trying to fit matriarchy, like a made-up matriarchy.
I do agree that, like, gender bending can lead to some very interesting choices and some very interesting performances, but I definitely don't think that is a substitute for well-written, complex female characters.
Exactly.
But, like, why not both?
It's just becoming too tropey just because they're trying to be like, we are breaking some new inclusive, like we are there for the female, but really it's not. It's just a grab at.
Yeah, I think there are certain instances where gender bending a role is like an interesting artistic choice that, you know, brings out different aspects of the original text. But I think there are other times where it's a shortcut and it's lazy.
Yes.
And they just don't want to write complex female characters.
Yes.
So I think that this show definitely avoids all of those pitfalls. I have seen criticisms where it's pointed out that, you know, these are wealthy white women, and I agree with that. Like, this is very inclusive show as far as like race. You do have Bonnie, who is a light-skinned black woman. They don't really go in season 1 into much of her experience as really the only woman of color in this community. But honestly, I think the fact that they're all wealthy white women is kind of the point.
Yeah, it's very deliberate. They're not trying to leave groups out by any means. It is to tell it's to drive towards a very specific point.
This show's undercurrent reminds me a lot of the film American Beauty.
Yeah.
Now,
granted, I agree with that.
Yeah. Granted, the star has come into problems, but it's actually one of my all-time favorite movies, just because it's another one of those onion peel back kind of stories, and the whole point of it is you do see somebody or a family or group of families that are in the suburbs, well off, facades of perfectly cut lawns and white picket fences, only to find out that there is a lot of hidden darkness behind the curtain. And so I think that taking it this way, and exactly, I think it is deliberate. I agree with Hillary, you know, having the most affluent, the people who are most likely to portray that their lives are perfect, only to find out that they're massively imperfect, is the point of it. I also want to point out, in a complete swing, that we have a fair amount of theatrically minded people and have done very little talking about the fact that one of the main story threads was trying to get Avenue Q produced in this town.
That's true. Community theater.
So we're talking about the race dynamics of the show, and yet the irony of it is that the musical is the one that has the song "Everyone's a Little Bit Racist." So sometimes. So yeah, again, I think it's all none of it is either or, none of it is black or white, none of it is up or down. It's somewhere all clustered in the middle of a nucleus of complicated, messy stuff. And I think if people are criticizing this as being like a whitewashed cast, I'm gonna have to call shenanigans. Not everything has to be entirely woke to be woke, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes just focusing on a facet of something is enough.
As a biracial man who is watching the show, I feel like that the show makes it a point that they're white female characters, and the fact to show that they don't have that white supremacy, white privilege of that everything is okay. Like, they have issues as well, even though they have money. And I think that speaks volumes to the show.
I think there's also quite a bit of economic dynamic within it, like between them, particularly between Jane and the other moms.
Of course.
I mean, they talk about it right out of the gate, because, like, Madeline's like, are you, like, I forget exactly how she says it, but, like, are you under 150, or...
Yeah, like the under over of that.
Yeah.
And that's another kind of change from the book. Like, in the book, they are kind of portrayed as more like maybe upper middle class. Maybe definitely not the extreme that we get to in the show. And then Celeste and Carrie are the ones who are actually wealthy. So there's a lot more of a separation between Celeste and Carrie and the rest of the characters. Whereas in the show, everybody's rich except Jane. And I think the fact too that, like, she's literally living in a 1-bedroom apartment, like she's sleeping on the pull-out couch while Ziggy's in the actual apartment, you know, really shows the kind of different circumstances that she's dealing with versus these other moms. I mean, these other moms have huge houses right on the beach with pools, they've got nannies, like, they're definitely in a much different situation than she is financially.
I love how I think it was, oh my God, Randa, is that her name? Is that how you say it?
Renata,
thank you, Randa. Oh, I'm 3 Trulies in, don't
I want a Randa, though.
Right? I love how she thought Jane was the nanny in episode.
Yeah,
I love
that's
how
in
she
the book.
goes, oh, I want to introduce you to my nanny. And I was like, yup, that's gold right there.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's also
I love Madeline's response too. Like, she's just young, like we once were. I really love it.
Well, and I think it all comes down to this is the window on the world, right? We're watching these completely otherwise wholly entitled women in their glass houses throwing stones at each other and watching it kind of crumble down around them. And so it kind of harkens back to all of the best soap opera kind of TV, right? You got your rich characters. They just happen to be women here. You've got a whole bunch of murder, mayhem, shenanigans, throwing wine and accusing kids of bullying other kids. So that didn't actually happen. But here they're just taking the tack that there's
Wait,
more
is
to
this a
the
podcast
story.
for Young and the Restless? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, that's what they want to hearken to that demographic. It's just more complicated, psychologically, sociologically, everything. I mean, it kind of is a human nature study, this show, which is, it's really well written.
I love analyzing people, so I was like, this is the best show ever.
5 stars. Holy smokes.
Holy smokes.
So let's see. I'm gonna pivot right now because we could talk about this the whole night, but we don't have that kind of time. So I'm gonna try to wind you down through our first look questions. We've already mentioned that this show was created by David E. Kelley, who has got to be one of the TV kingpin powerhouses, right? He's done a crap load of TV. You've heard of all of it. I'm here to tell you. Have you watched any of his other shows? Would you watch any other shows that he creates in the future, past projects, or any other projects as a result of Big Little Lies, or have you? I'll start this question since I've barely talked and can have an answer. Let's see. Of this list, the only ones that I have not watched are, at least a little bit of, are Picket Fences and Chicago Hope, because it's a medical show and I don't do that medical shows very often, and Goliath. That's probably the one I haven't heard of really and I don't really know much about, but I've at least seen parts of or trailers for or a whole series of all the rest of those shows. How about you all, y'all?
I don't think I've seen anything.
What?
I haven't, I'm looking at this list and I have maybe seen Boston Public, maybe. But that's it.
McBeal? I didn't remember.
They're younger.
I didn't remember watching any of those shows. Remember, I am a baby.
Never seen Doogie
Anna Laura is the youngest. I can vouch, and probably a little too young for the Doogie Howsers for sure. So.
I was gonna say yes, Doogie Howser, because you watched it.
Yeah, hearts for NPH, although he ended up,
I knew he was gay back then, just saying.
See, I did not, and I'm fully supportive.
Eddie's I called it first.
But at the time, he was the genius teenage doctor. You gotta love that.
Our mother watched The Practice quite a bit. A lot of people love Ally McBeal, but I did not watch it. My best friend loves Ally McBeal, but I never watched it.
I don't know if you'd love it. It's a fun show. It definitely goes off the rails by the end. It gets all kinds of even crazier than The Dancing Baby. But if you enjoy Callista Flockhart and Portia de Rossi before she became Ellen's wife and some other people on that show, then I highly recommend Ally McBeal. It is kind of fun, and since you're all drinking tonight while we're talking about this show, I highly recommend watching that show whilst also drinking.
I agree.
Wasn't Boston Public the show in the school?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I did watch that, and that's all I got. But I would still probably watch other things. I mean, sure.
I've seen all of them, actually, and I'm actually current on Big Sky. And Goliath, I jumped shark because Billy Bob Thornton's the same character.
That he always plays, you mean?
That he always plays.
So he's the Sling Blade guy again? Uh-huh.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Sling blade. I forgot about that until you said it. That was a thing that happened.
That's how he became famous, Julianne.
I know. That's like my earliest memory of him.
Uh-huh.
He's like, damn it.
So, question, when we say it was created by David E. Kelly, like, what does this mean? Does this mean he has selected the, like, all of the players in terms of the visual aspect and the sound editing and all of this? Because we've asked this question before on podcasts, and, like, going back to, like, a Mr. Robot, like Sam Esmail, like, very distinct voice, like the way that the show looks, very distinct, very classic, like specific to him. Or like Breaking Bad, Vince Gilligan, like you can watch that and you're like, I know that this was made by Vince Gilligan, so I don't have the context of the other shows. Like, does Big Little Lies feel like those other shows? And if it doesn't, I don't know that I would follow him.
I would say that it does. Every creator...
Okay, I would disagree. I don't think they do.
Okay, I'll explain mine first. So creator
Controversy.
Yeah, creator typically means conceptualizes an executive produces. But as an executive producer, they may be more hands-on, like a Sam Esmail, or they may be less hands-on, like a Ryan Murphy. However, as a conceptualizer, what this means is they're going to have a pretty sizable hand in the pot, even if they have other people carrying out the vision. J.J. Abrams is another one like that. He kind of starts things off and then jumps away as he creates his next project. I would say David Kelly is kind of in that same vein. So to that end, all of these shows have vastly different premises, there's different casts, but there are elements and tonal qualities to many of these shows that I think Big Little Lies draws from. I think it's got sort of the wry humor of Ally McBeal, for example. I think it has the sort of melodramatic pieces that come out of the practice. I think it's got, I think Doogie Howser is an outlier. That was his first one, and that was totally like sitcom about a teenage doctor, so that's not really a comparison point. But
still good.
Yes.
Still good.
Yes, true. But sort of in the later dramas and later programs, there are elements that feel like a David E. Kelly show. The dialogue is very intelligent. The ensemble cast of characters are very tightly woven and really well cast. I think he has a very hands-on approach to the casting pieces of the process. But other than that, the shows themselves, A, there are so many of them, and B, they have different premises. So I'm not drawing like a direct comparison of they're all the same. They just have, I think, an element of his voice in all of them. Especially in the later ones, I think there's that undercurrent of David E. Kelly speaking to this just as much. But really, apart from the casting, probably some of the adaptation material, I'm sure that he contributed to the writing on the show. Ultimately, there was a single director that directed season 1 and a single director that directed season 2 that was then re-edited by the director from season 1. So to the extent that there is a voice to Big Little Lies, I think it's primarily the directors because they had one director for a whole season.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That I noticed that, like in the opening credits. That's something that I look for. Because in a show, I get really like hooked on a specific vision of something, or if like a creator has something that they want to tell, like I might get really invested in that. Like that's where my frame of reference for Laura Dern, Renata in this show, is like, I'm a huge David Lynch fan. David Lynch freaking loves Laura Dern, as he should, because she's amazing. So I like to follow a creator that has that like really specific kind of vision like that. So I was curious if it was like, was this David E. Kelly, or was it like a little bit more of the director had a hand in the aspects that I was really enjoying about the show?
I think in comparison to the TV that you traditionally talked about on this podcast, have requested to talk about on this podcast, and that we've talked about when you've been doing my hair, David E. Kelly is probably not the type of producer-creator you would gravitate to, because you do look for the ones that have a specific stamp like the ones that you mentioned. You know, Vince Gilligan is a great example, because even if he isn't the primary writer, he always is at least one of the writers, and his voice always shines through in what he makes.
Cool.
So.
I guess, Kylie, I would, how you put it, I would say that I agree with you. Like, I know, like, when you put it that way. But I do have to say, of this list, how you've talked on this podcast, I think you would like Mr. Mercedes.
Okay.
It definitely, it doesn't fall along the lines of how the show is, but the writing is really good, and it helps you, the writing makes you fall in love with the characters.
Nice. Oh, it's got Brendan Gleeson. He's great.
Oh, yeah. That's also another reason
Love him.
Yeah. Oh, okay, this is a good cast. All right, thanks for that, Rack. I'm gonna check that out.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Well, I think we've already addressed the next couple of questions, which is how Big Little Lies compares to other TV shows. I think we've been very thorough about comparing this. So now we get to ask... Now we get to ask the $1 million question, because, of course, as Couch Potatoes Unite has been going now for a fair few years, we feel a certain responsibility, plus it's tradition, to our listeners as far as these shows that we talk about. So I'm going to ask you the $1 million question, but think of it in the framework of having just watched season 1. Hashtag no spoilers for season 2. That's the next time we talk. I'm
going to recommend it.
Recommend 100%.
I was just going to say,
absolutely recommend. 100%. If you haven't watched this show,
please watch.
You're like,
do it.
Don't put it in a box.
Amen.
Amen.
We just a verbal diarrhea the crap out of that question.
With the question, which I don't think she even said the full question yet.
Yeah,
that's right,
Julianne.
Julianne is so right.
But we all knew what she was saying.
I would also
all knew where this was going.
I would also recommend Big Little Lies. I don't really know how you could go wrong. I think I would recommend it to a lot of people. It's short, it's good, it's very fast-paced, well, mostly fast-paced, and it's incredibly well acted.
Yeah, so our brother just needs to watch it.
That's what she said.
Yeah, I've
tell him his two sisters think he needs to watch. That'll make him watch it.
Yeah,
I guess if you don't like dramas, but then what's your problem?
That should be the first thing you address.
That's my favorite thing that anyone has said today.
If you don't like good television, then don't watch this show.
Yep, get out!
If you like good TV, don't watch this show.
Oh my god!
If you hate quality.
Well, this is a very fine panel, and I enjoy you all immensely. But at this time, what I have to ask is, other than, and we've talked about so much, but other than what we have talked about, addressed, said, or otherwise covered, is there anything else, any other feelings you have to get off your chest regarding the first season of Big Little Lies?
I do want to say really quick, because I think it's relevant, a show that immediately comes to mind that I think is similar is Little Fires Everywhere. That was also an adaptation of, a recent work of literary fiction written by a woman. It's about more upper middle class. The people in Little Fires Everywhere don't necessarily have quite as much money as the people in Big Little Lies. They're contrasting more upper middle class with truly middle class or, struggling single parent. You also have Reese Witherspoon starring and producing. She was, I think, possibly even more so than she did for Big Little Lies. She was really influential in getting Little Fires Everywhere made. And yeah, kind of dealing with those themes again of women in different financial and social situations and keeping secrets and all that stuff. It's a very different show. I would say. I think it definitely shares a lot of DNA with Big Little Lies, but it's definitely its own thing. But anyone who enjoyed Big Little Lies, either the show or the book, I highly recommend Little Fires Everywhere, both the miniseries and the book.
And Carrie Williams, right?
Washington.
Carrie Washington. Yeah.
You still had to
Carrie
duck it.
Washington.
I was like, have I met her or something?
That show is very good. I did watch that. It's good. It's good. It's not like this, but it's good.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it shares some DNA, and especially like on the surface, sounds really similar, and it does share, I think the bones of the stories are very similar, but in execution, they definitely are unique. But I think it's definitely like, if you like A, then you'll like B kind of thing.
Fair enough. Guess what's getting added to the list?
Yeah!
It's so good. So good.
Good.
All right. Anything else you want to say specifically about Big Little Lies?
The music is fantastic. Like, good soundtrack just to listen to in your life. Like, it's a lot of blues, it's a lot of soul, it's a lot of, like, just, it's great. Very moody.
I just want to say that I appreciate the fact that there was dynamic, strong actors and actresses in the show, and that's not what kept me watching. I didn't keep watching because I loved Nicole Kidman or Reese Witherspoon. I kept watching because it was a good show. And I very much appreciate that about this show. And that's really hard to do when you have very strong names, to have a good story and people keep watching, not because of the names.
I will link, I'm sure somebody's compiled some sort of playlist on Spotify that usually happens. I will link one into our post because I
got it.
Oh, good. I also wanted to second Julianne's praise of the music. That's one of the things that we also talk about frequently, both together on and off the podcast, about the music of shows, especially when they're really carefully chosen and well placed and always in a way that you notice. And Big Little Lies is pretty excellent at that.
It's kind of random, but I'm actually super excited because they're working on, rebooting Batman again. But I'm actually, Zoe Kravitz is cast as Selene Kyle, and I think she's, perfect. I'm really excited about it. So,
yeah,
pretty stoked about that.
Same Z's.
That's all. That's all I got.
Playlist sent, my friends. Playlist sent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else about Big Little Lies? But for really, though.
No.
Okay. Hillary's always good for a no. So we've told a lot of not big or little lies. We've covered some truths, but this isn't the last time we're talking about Big Little Lies. There's a second season. It was a surprising second season that was made. We're going to talk about that second season in our next episode of this Catching Up miniseries. What I'd like to do at this time is thank Hillary and Anna Laura and Julianne and Callie and Eddie for joining me to launch our Big Little Lies panel. And since they were so kind enough to do so, we're going to give them a break right now while we roll the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kels Rezmer. Kels played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole shebang was engineered by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us, give us stars, provide comments, or review us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Amazon are just a few of the places you can find us, but we're also on YouTube. We have our website. Otherwise, feel free to tell us how we're doing, what we should add, subtract, keep, or toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions for shows we might consider, contact us at our website where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, our Facebook, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or wherever you get your podcasts. Though, of course, we have new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time, and always have new episodes coming down the pipe. Just listen to our intros. If you miss old episodes or want to know in general what shows we cover, just search for us. Find us wherever you do searchable things on the internet. Don't forget that exclamation point, or contact us via our website, our email, our social media accounts, and stay up on all the new events and episodes by our humble little podcast, Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point. Until the next time, all available seasons of Big Little Lies are available to stream on HBO or HBO Max. So you need to get yourself a subscription. In the meantime, our Big Little Lies panel will next reconvene very shortly, in fact, to talk Season 2 of the series and Episode 2 of our 2-part Catching Up miniseries. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned!
Bye-bye.